Hey, movie maniacs. My name is Sky, and I'm joined by my brother, Dusty. Hey, Dusty, so I have a question for you. Why is it that we love gangster movies and we want to see these bad criminal guys win in the end?
I don't know. That's a great question because I start to think to myself, like, should we be rooting for the good guys, not like bad guys against
Were
other
there
bad
good
guys?
guys in this movie?
That's the big thought. No, there
Yeah.
doesn't seem like there was any good guys. There was the only one was Colin. What's his name? The
Colin Farrell,
coach.
coach.
Yeah. Yeah, the coach. He was trying to do good, but obviously he knows how to do bad things. He was trying to do good, but yeah, there were no good guys in this movie at all.
Not a single one.
But
No,
yeah, it's a great point.
mhm. Yeah. So, and it's weird, like Bugsy Siegel, or you watch like a Guy Ritchie's prior movie, Snatch and Lock, Stock. Like you want to see these criminals succeed in the end. Certain criminals, as opposed to the other ones. So, of course, obviously, as I'm watching this movie, I'm rooting for Matthew McConaughey. But it's really interesting how they started off, and it really did look like he got murdered in the very beginning. So I was thinking, all the way up until he didn't get murdered, I was thinking, wow, we're going to build to his death. This is going to be pretty cool seeing what's happened. Is Charlie Hunnam, Ray, is he going to take over? And so I thought that was a really interesting way to start the movie like that with a little deception.
It was, and it got me thinking. The only movie that I've ever seen where it starts with the actual death that actually happens and not trying to trick you was Memento. Remember Memento, where it plays the whole entire movie backwards, like it's edited backwards. It's a crazy way to actually tell a story, but it draws you in. It helps you to follow the movie because the character himself loses his memory. So it's like, yeah, it's really neat. But
Yeah,
that's the only movie where you see the guy actually die way beforehand, and then it goes backwards. So all the other movies were I won't say all, everyone that I can think of, it was a
it's a red
trick on
herring.
us.
It's to lead you off or lead you
Yes.
off track.
But I thought the exact same thing. I was like, oh, that's cool. If he is actually dead and now they're replaying it and they're showing you actually how he died. But yeah, then again, we know unless we actually see the body drop with the bullet in his head, they're not dead.
For sure, for sure. Speaking of bullet to the head, I loved it when his wife, we're jumping way to the end of the movie. I loved it when she shot those two dudes right in the head with that little 22. Bam, pierced their skull and they died. I just
Did
found that
that
really cool.
did that remind you of any other movie?
It reminded me of Deadpool, and I thought for a second he was going to pull the bullet out and still live.
A movie that I was reminded of was My Blue Heaven, one of the a great funny movies. You remember that movie?
I totally remember it. I can't recall a tiny gun.
Okay, so no, the tiny gun was not in the movie,
Oh,
but do you remember when Steve Martin was testifying and he's on the court, like at court, he was a witness and he's saying, and so then he pops the guy in the back of the head with the 22, and they use a 22 because it's a little tiny bullet and it goes in and then it kind of rattles around in your brain, and then if a 45 will blow a barn door out the back of your head, and there's a lot of dry cleaning involved, and you don't want that. And then Nikki's mother made some Parmesan. I thought it was a little too much. So he went into all that sort of stuff. But that's exactly what I thought was, yes, you absolutely use a 22 because it'll go through, but they won't continue. And then it'll rattle around in there and they'll be like, oh. But yeah, she did a great job. Shot, obviously, for being a Brit, that they can't have any firearms. Like, they don't have freedom like in America, where we have freedom, we can have firearms, which we love. And so she was a great shot for not having, but anyways, in her line of work and her husband's line of work, maybe they got a lot of practice. But yeah, that was super, super cool.
yeah, for sure. And they should enlist her for The Walking Dead for sure with those headshots.
It
But
would be just like if she's driving in a car, going 100 miles an hour in a bumpy road over rocks and still shooting like The Walking Dead and hitting people in the brains. That's absolutely right.
yeah. So I wrote down, you just mentioned My Blue Heaven. I wrote that down because we've got to cover it at some point. I haven't seen it for years, but I remember loving that movie. You and I growing up, we probably watched it once every few months or something, or at least once a
Yep.
year with our mom. And so that would be fun to cover in this podcast.
I'm glad you made a note of that. That's a fantastic movie. I've watched it. I can't even count, at least two
Yeah.
dozen times, like over and over again. It's just a brilliantly funny movie. So going back to The Gentleman, I want to start with, what is your grade? Because what did you think of the movie? What is it, rewatchable and all that sort of stuff?
I give this one an A. I can easily rewatch it. Um, thinking back, like this is a perfect movie to watch after last week's disaster of Bad Boys for Life, because Bruckheimer, those directors, those writers, as you and I discussed, they think we're idiots, right? But Guy Ritchie comes in, he writes and directs a movie where he counts on you paying attention to the story, the characters' names, following the action, following the plot, right? So this was such, maybe because we watched that movie last week, this one was so much better. I give it a great story, great storytelling. Oh, the storytelling aspect of having Fletcher come in and actually kind of like giving a movie pitch to an executive, but that's how they told the story. I loved it.
Yeah, and you're right. And also, on top of that, having to understand the guttural type of language that they're using. It's like,
I know.
Enunciate.
I know. They need to speak English over there in Europe for sure.
They need to speak American. That's what they need to speak. It reminded me of The Tick, the cartoon The Tick, where you have the masked men. Like, I can't remember what the group was, but they were literally had like helmets over their face, like buckets over their face. And Tick is like, I can't understand what you're saying. Enunciate. It was hilarious. And that's literally what I thought. Like, I can't understand what you're saying, bloke. It just I can't understand. But even with that, I was still able to follow and track. A lot of words I missed over. I couldn't really figure out what they were saying, but it was fun listening to it and watching it the whole way.
For sure, man. And I do want to watch it again, like you asked about rewatchability.
Yeah.
It's definitely rewatchable just so that I know from the beginning what's going to happen. And then I can see little clues and hints and how things progress, things that you kind of missed in the first time or the first go around of watching. So I'm definitely looking forward to that.
Yeah, I give it, and see, it's not an A+. An A+ would be like Lock, Stock,
like 1917.
Or 1917 was
okay. Uh-huh.
So Lock, Stock was probably, it's right up there. My favorite out of all, like Lock, Stock, Snatch, and this one, Gentleman. Snatch is brilliant. Snatch was so many other stories interweaving. So I think Snatch is an A+ in my opinion. This is an A. This is definitely rewatchable. There were some parts that I wanted to bring up to you that I was a little fuzzy. Maybe I missed it because they were speaking in British rather than American. And so, okay, so let's run through a couple of things that were a little off or I couldn't figure out exactly how it happened. So number one, how did they know, or how did the number two guy, can't remember his name, but how did he know
Ray?
That he was that his name?
Ray, Charlie Hunnam's character?
Yes, okay, Ray. How did Ray know that the one guy was spying on them, finding them? We don't understand how he actually knew that he was being followed and taking pictures and outside the front house and all that sort of stuff. Do you understand how he did that?
We don't know. Maybe they also, and they didn't show it, maybe they have somebody within that Dave, the newspaper guy's organization, telling them what's going to happen, and they just cut that on, put that on the cutting room floor. But he says it basically at the one time at the very end, I knew that you were watching us the whole time because I'm better at my job than you. And so maybe he's, as we're seeing Hugh Grant or Fletcher's character taking pictures and watching them do their dastardly stuff, he probably saw him at some point watching them, Like even when he's wearing a ghillie suit and camouflage and taking pictures, you could probably spot that. And he's good at his job. I think that's how.
So all they had to do was literally like a 3-second take, or like an image, like 3 seconds, maybe 5 seconds long, where he's getting somebody whispering in his ear. And it would add to that, like, okay, this is how he found out that it was happening, was because somebody on the inside told him. And it would just leave that whole question out, like, oh, you're that good, like, but it's, I want to know, how did you know? So that's number one. It's kind of like, let's just throw this in there. If they would have, let's just make him just phenomenally amazing at his job and not share with you. So if at the beginning of the movie you see somebody literally leaving his house, Ray's house, that in the end you see him for 3 seconds or 5 seconds whispering in his ear, and he was at this other place. And so it ties them together really quickly. Well, like it's a bow that wraps up. It's like that. Oh, that's awesome. I didn't see that coming. That would have been really cool.
Gotcha.
So the next thing that, probably one of the last ones, there was a couple other things that kind of got a little hitchy, but one big one was, how did those kids, the martial arts kids, know to go attack that car? Because Mickey was getting picked up and the Russians were going to kill him. How did they know to do that?
Yeah, they don't explain that at all. So I don't know.
Yeah, so something like that. It's like you can't have something so dramatic in the movie without explaining how that happens. It just makes it just feel like, oh, you just made that up. Like it didn't help the story at all. It was just like, oh, he just got off. Like he's the luckiest guy in the world, or like
Yeah.
I. It didn't fly with me because those two things. Like, how did they know that he was being followed, or they were being followed, and it's like the big things in the movie that okay, we knew you were following us. Well, you got to tell us how you do that.
Mhm.
And number two, how you got away from the bad guys where it was an impossible situation. Nobody knew. How did you get out of that? Like, how did they know to? So both of those things, that was a big miss in my part.
Yeah, sometimes they write coincidences into movies, like lazy writing, and maybe they couldn't figure out a better way. Or maybe it was something that just ended up on the cutting room floor because it was almost a 2 hour long movie. Possibly.
Yeah,
I don't know.
yeah, that could be it. It just seems like they could have, in both instances, like in the communication, like when the kids were calling the coach, oh, we're taking care of this. Oh yeah, this one guy told us that we got a tip from this or that.
Yeah.
All they had to do was add in those few extra words, and that would have helped resolve a couple of those issues. But those
Yeah.
were the two major issues that I had with the story. But those are honestly, in my opinion, those are pretty significant issues because how the main character gets out of this bad stuff is not solved. It's not answered. So I think that brings, just because of that, it might drop it down to an A minus in my opinion. But I'm gonna still keep it as an A.
Cool. I'm good with the A as well. So I do have a question for you because you brought up those boys assaulting his truck at the end, right? With the rifles. Was their goal to save him or to kill Mickey?
That's a great question. I really think it's to save him, and the reason why is that why would the coach be continually helping? Like, at the very end, he's like, "This is four times that I helped you," and they're on the same team. Like the coach and the kids. Like the kids are not going to go against the coach. So I think it's to save Mickey.
Yeah, that's interesting. My initial thought was they're trying to kill Mickey, but Mickey ducked and got away in time. But I don't really know. Like you said at the end, they called the coach and said, "We're going to take care of this for you." My thinking was, we're going to take care of the guy that's now holding this over you, that you owe a debt to now. That was my initial thinking. But I
Maybe
do
that
like the
might be it.
idea. What?
Maybe
Well,
that
I
might
like
be
the
it.
idea that they were there to just take out the Russian mobsters. But then your question of how did they know about that takes on even bigger significance, right? Because
Yeah.
these were mobsters that didn't have anything to do with anything at any time. Why would the kids know? I think the kids knew what Mickey was up to. Maybe they just tailed him and they were just
Maybe.
waiting for him to leave his warehouse.
Maybe. Yeah, that could be it. I mean, we can give them the benefit of the doubt and say that that's what it is. But yeah, there's open ended.
Yeah.
It doesn't wrap it up for me, and so that's why I'm like, it's a little bit like Snatch. Like everything's wrapped up really really well. Plus, you got Brad Pitt in there. Brad Pitt's fantastic. It doesn't have any loose ends that aren't tied up, and so that's why I like Snatch a little bit more, or actually a lot more than this movie. But I had an enjoyable time. I loved Hugh Grant. I've always loved Hugh Grant. He is fantastic as an actor, very entertaining, very fun, and in this movie, he did a phenomenal job. And I liked I don't say like I loved the storytelling aspect that Hugh Grant is doing, and you see him like it's like he's relaying the story, and we see it play out, but it's not always like we don't know if that's exactly what happened because that's his version of it. All that can play together. I was like, that was really cool.
Yeah, for sure, and I really like that aspect as well. Hugh Grant nailed it in his role right there. And one of the things too, like he's so expressive on his face, and and I guess he's probably a gay character. He was attracted to Ray, and he put his hand on his leg, and he acted all sheep. I mean, he did a really good job in that role. As was he a newspaper reporter or was he like a private detective? What was he?
I don't know. I think definitely he works for that news agency or that one guy. He definitely works for him or is providing content for him somehow, either being like or like Spider-Man, Spider-Man one-off like photo shots and stuff like that, where he's a contractor or subcontractor. That could be it. It could be that he actually works for him. But 150,000 pounds is a lot of money in American money. It's probably close to like, I don't know, 250 pounds or dollars.
Oh, wow.
But yeah, I just in getting this whole process, I liked the storytelling aspect of why he wanted to go after Mickey. The main guy for the news
David?
agency. Is that the main guy that had the
Big
romp
Dave.
with the pig?
Yeah.
He's the one that had the romp with the pig, Big
Yep,
Dave.
Big Dave.
Okay, so I liked the storytelling aspect. So the entire storytelling, other than those two things that I just brought up, uh, other than that, the whole story was fun, engaging, entertaining, and you could track with it really, really well. And yes, you're right. Guy Ritchie says, my audience is smart. They're going to figure this out. We don't have to literally hold their hand and tell them every single thing. And so I liked the whole storytelling aspect of it.
I agree with you there. And I think maybe 20 minutes into the movie, I became acclimated to the way they were speaking. And I was starting to really follow along with everything that Fletcher and Ray, the action of the story from that point forward. It took me a little acclimatization I had to go through.
Yeah, yeah, I think so too. And I liked the how they talk the story. They get the history of Mickey out there too in the storytelling. Like
Yeah.
this guy, going through high school, blah blah blah. As a kid, going through high school, going to college, and all that sort of stuff, and got to where he is now. And now he's like a refined marijuana dealer. And that was rather interesting. But the whole storytelling aspect, they did a great job, and they really brought you along. And like I said, the only two little things, they don't really derail the entire movie. That's why I like the story a lot, because it weaves so many things together, and it has Hugh Grant talking to Ray, or Hugh Grant's character talking to Ray, and coming out and really explaining everything. And as you're watching it, you're watching history, but then eventually it catches up to where you are now. So it's just a fun way to actually show and tell a story in the movie.
For sure, for sure. One aspect I really liked was the fact that Mickey's operation, how it worked, how he relied on this old aristocratic money. People die, half of it goes to the state, and so now their heirs don't have enough money. It makes perfect sense. You feed them $100,000 a month or whatever it is. Now you have the run of their 200-acre estate or whatever to run your business. I thought that was really smart on Mickey's part to figure that out, and of course smart on the writer's part to write that in.
So Mickey is so stupid.
Why
I'm
is
gonna have to
that?
say that he is so stupid. The only time that you ever give out the location of your operation, 2 days later or like 12 hours later, it gets hit. Oh, let me see. It's probably somebody else. That's probably dude. That is just, how in the world do you not literally go right to that guy and say, "What did you do?" It's so stupid.
Well, I agree with you, but I think from the beginning, as soon as their place got hit, and it was the one that they took Matthew to, they were on to him right then and there. And I think from that point forward, everything was planned, and they wouldn't take Matthew to any other places. He even told him, you're not going to see my distribution until the money's in escrow later on. And then so like he had that plan. He wasn't planning on Matthew backstabbing him like that to try to drive the price down. But once it happened, I think they were onto him. And all of the ideas, like Fletcher was saying, you don't know what's going on. I got the information. And he knew that Matthew was the bad guy, but they already knew. And then Ray just let Fletcher tell his story to learn possibly more that Fletcher might know. Like he was saying when they were doing that little recap at the end, you were drinking scotch, you kind of lost your, I don't know, whatever, not lost your mind, but lost your way, and you started speaking too much and giving too much information. So I think they were on to him from the beginning when they got hit. But you don't just jump into it right then. Maybe let it play out.
Yeah, I get that, but we don't see any other information about the dry eyes and the guy, I can't remember, the guy that's buying the business, when they're at the stadium. We don't see anything that they know. The only time that they know anything about that is when
Fletcher shows them the video.
Yeah, Fletcher shows them the video, shows them pictures. That's when they learn. Now, I'm probably like overthinking it. It just comes out like Mickey was stupid. Like he's literally, we don't see him say, "Hey, I showed this guy, and now that same one got hit. Let's look into that." We don't see that. So that's one thing I was just like, that was one other little thing. I was like, that it should have been something that was a part of the movie. If he's so smart, he would have literally done that. But maybe he did. We just didn't see it. Maybe just left it out on the cutting room floor, like you said. Yeah. But I'm not going to give him the benefit of the doubt, because they put in Guy Ritchie's really, really good at making sure details are he's very detail oriented, seems like. And so it just seems like that was another little tiny little hole in the movie, because if Mickey is so smart, so ruthless, he would literally have gone to that guy and put a bullet to his head.
Yeah, but you have to prove that it really happened in the first. He doesn't have to. He could just go up and kill Matthew, right?
He doesn't have to prove a thing.
Yeah, yeah. But what ends up happening in the end, he gets $270 million from him and a pound of his own flesh, right? But I want to get back to what you said, Mickey, being a little stupid. That leads into my very first lesson, right? When you are a criminal and you run an organization, people are going to try to get to you however they can. And through your wife is one of those ways. So he always had bodyguards with him. Life lesson number one is have hire bodyguards for your wife, especially if you're involved in criminal activities.
That is a great, great point. If you need bodyguards, your family does, especially that's the way they're going to get to you. And you can tell, like, that's every single movie we've ever seen. Like, if there is a weakness, they're going to go after your weakness. And it's your family is one of the most weakest parts of us because we can let things happen to us. But when we see something happen to our family, that's when we can't stand it. And so it's so much easier to take it on ourselves. So that's a great, great lesson. Now, I want to jump into my first lesson. So my first lesson is I learned it from the coach. So it doesn't matter if you did not do it. If somebody underneath you, if you're leading them, you're coaching them or whatever, if they do something, the people that you're coaching and leading does something bad, you have to own up to it. And you have to say, it's my fault. And what he did was absolutely the right thing, was to, make it right. Because if he didn't, it would just escalate and get it worse. So own up to things that you do as well as the people underneath you do.
For sure, man. Coach was a super honorable, good guy. No wonder his students, or his boxing students, whatever you call them, respect him ultimately, right? And he has the whole idea. His mentality is the buck stops here. I'm the boss. They listen to me. They respect me. I take care of them. So you're right. I'm responsible for my underlings. That's how it should be for anything. Any boss of any organization.
Absolutely.
Yep. Cool deal. So my second lesson is very simply, do not get in bed with criminals. Coach, he said, okay, I'm going to help you out. He didn't want to get in bed, but to save his boys, he had to do it, right? But what happens is you commit to doing these three things. They're three pretty bad things, right? One of them, he made Big Dave mate with a pig, I guess. And he says, oh my gosh, I was there and I'm still shocked. I absolutely loved it. But when you get in bed with the criminals, you're going to end up doing things that you're going to regret and not want to do. He actually ended up killing two guys on his own at the end of the movie. Number 4, he said. Yeah. And just don't get in bed with criminals.
I agree. I'm going to tie on to that. It's not that same one, but it's do not blackmail drug dealers. That's like the dumbest thing you could ever do. How are you ever going to win? They could literally just kill. Oh, I have insurance policy. Well, if you have an insurance policy, hide it better. Make it foolproof so that they cannot ever figure it out. Make it digital in the cloud. And if you don't, this is one thought. If I don't stop it in this many, as soon as 72 hours is up, if I don't stop it, it's going to be sent out automatically. And I have 800 places that it would be sent from. So there's no way you're going it's not a briefcase and you just, here you go. Yeah. So, but the biggest thing is never blackmail drug dealers. Don't even be around drug dealers. Stay away from drug dealers.
Yeah, you're 100% right about that. And that was actually my Monday morning quarterback. So thanks for bringing that one up. My third lesson was, always scope out the car before you get into it, right? We see it so many times in movies. You get into the back seat, you expect your driver to be the driver. Bam, he turns out to be Russian agent or whatever it ends up being. You get into the front seat of your car and you look back and there's a zombie in the back seat, right? Zombieland. I mean, this stuff happens all the time. Scope out the car before you get in.
That is a great, great point. And that's something that I never really do. I should check out the back of my car anytime I get an Uber, just to verify. But what's interesting with Uber, you actually see the car. I think you get a picture of the person so you can see what they look like, which is very, very beneficial. But yeah, that would, especially if you are in the business of killing people, of hurting people, and people wanting to hurt you. You had somebody literally just try to kill you, and your number 2, Ray, had to come in and save you. You should be much more on guard. Absolutely. Yep.
For sure.
My third lesson goes back to what I was originally saying with having deductive reasoning. Well, my one, I have 18 or 16 different sites. The one that I've ever showed, the first time I ever showed anybody is the one that got hit. Maybe it's that person. I should zero in on that person and maybe they did, maybe, but we don't see it in the movie. But yeah, I'm like, use deductive reasoning, and there is no such thing as coincidence. Batman Part 3 taught us that. You know, when Commissioner Gordon told
Batman
Robin,
Forever? You mean the one with Arnold
no,
Schwarzenegger?
not with the nipples. No, not with the nipples on it. It was
The
funny
Dark
with
Knight Returns or whatever, the last of the Christian Bale trilogy. Yeah,
exactly. That's when Commissioner Gordon said, "There's no in this business, in our line of work, there is no such thing as coincidence." And I am one. I'm not gullible. I guess I might be just a little bit. I'm not completely skeptical. My wife is absolutely, Melissa. She's completely skeptical of everything. Like if it comes up, oh, I wonder, and like, nah, just go with it. And so I need to tell myself like, there's no such thing as coincidences. And so if the one that got hit is the one that I first showed somebody that ever, then there's no such thing as coincidences. It's this guy.
for sure. You are right about that. Let me see. My Monday morning quarterback tied into one of your lessons. What's your Monday morning quarterback?
Is do a better job, and I already talked about it. Do a better job with your insurance policy. Like make it foolproof, where it's electronic, made where it's automatically going to happen, not like hidden underneath your grandma's bed or something like that. You want to make sure your insurance policy is literally foolproof if you're going to be blackmailing a drug dealer.
Yep. I like that. Let me see here. My favorite scene was when, and it relates to Team America, what we saw, what we've seen already. But when he goes into with Ray, goes into gosh darn, what was the guy's name? Oh, Lord George was his name, the
George,
Chinese
yep.
guy's restaurant, and he spiked his tea and he's projectile vomiting during that whole scene. The character of Mickey is super menacing and dangerous. And speaking of menacing, Ray in the apartment with that drug using girl and all those other guys, super menacing as well, right? That's one of the things I love about these movies is when you get the main character being super menacing and everything seems scary and tense and you don't know what they're going to do. I was kind of assuming Lord George was going to die, not just, spew up projectile vomit and then be okay, right? I thought he was going to try to eliminate that competition. But just overall, that scene, I love the menacing aspect of it. And the projectile vomiting, I enjoyed that one.
I agree. So there was the whole movie, it was enjoyable to watch. I'm trying to pinpoint one that I liked, a scene that I liked the most. I think it was going into that apartment complex and going and then, chasing everybody down, trying to get the cameras. That entire scene was rather entertaining, rather fun. But yeah, you're right. So anytime that I see a bad guy, and Ray is a bad guy, anytime I see a bad guy that is literally not scared, not malicious, not like he's just methodical,
calmly sitting there and rolling a joint.
Yes, you're like, and think of like Pulp Fiction, where you have the very first scene. They're Samuel L. and Travolta. They're going inside there. They're just, this is a Tuesday. You're gonna die, and so when you have that perspective that, hey, dude, you're done. I thought that was really rather menacing. And so the different type of bad guy would be like the crazy one, the one that's like, oh, I'm gonna kill you, but he actually does. That's not as like fearful as somebody who is methodical, somebody who is patient and knows the outcome and is ready to do it. Like those type of bad guys to me are much more menacing than the crazy wacko type people.
I agree with you 100% right there. What is your prop from this movie?
So I was thinking that I didn't really have the only one that really comes to mind is the 22, and the 22 gun with the bullets inside that case. That would be fun to have. I couldn't think of another prop, but yeah, that would probably be it.
Yep, I feel the same way. The 22 as well. That was my choice. Let's see here. What else did we fail to mention, Dust?
So going throughout the whole movie, so everybody watching this on YouTube, you see our names, and I'm not going to say our names. You're going to have to go watch the YouTube video. So go to, on the description, you go to watchandlearnpodcast.com/YouTube. It'll take to our YouTube page. You can see our names. So I got a special name on there, and it's something about meat on there. And Sky has another one that's also about like a British name. So you can check out our names on there. But I really it's just fun seeing different cultures. Like my wife and my kids, we all travel the world. We've traveled to many different places all over the world. And in 2018, we went through 11 different countries on a 6-week trip around Europe. And it was just fun reminiscing of like London and being in Great Britain and seeing all that sort of stuff. I was like, oh, that's just rather entertaining seeing that. And hearing their languages and stuff like that. I really enjoyed it. So yeah, the movie was rather fun. And go and check out our YouTube page where you can see our names that what we wrote on for ourselves, gave our names for ourselves on the show.
Yep, totally. Go check that out. A couple things I really liked. After the second guy, Fahouk, fell off, Mickey said to Ray, "You need to invest in some parachutes, buddy." That was good. And then the other line was, "I'm only a blue belt, boss." And then Ray or whatever that other guy got into the car, and they were able to take Big Dave. There were some really funny, cheeky kind of lines in the movie.
I agree. It was a clever and smart movie. So yeah, just like I think Guy Ritchie does a great job in the majority of his movies. Now, a friend of mine, or my friend Mike, Mike, he told me about another movie. It was like Rocketeer. No, Rob Rocket. I can't remember what it was called, but he said that Guy Ritchie made another movie back in like 2009 that was really good, like Snatch and Lock, Stock, and like this one. So I can't remember what it's called, but I'm probably gonna
Rock and Rolla, something like that.
Yes, Rock and Rolla. He said it was really entertaining, so I might have to go back and watch that.
We might have to. Actually, I'll write that down on our list. Cool. Oh, and Ash, watching this movie here, I love Charlie Hunnam, seen him in a ton of movies. The very first movie I ever saw him was Green Street Hooligans. Did you ever watch that?
No, I didn't.
Oh, I'll write it down. That's a good one. We might have to cover that at some point. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. It's about just basically football hooligans, soccer punks. They really love their football team, footies, and they just support them, and they get into gigantic brawls with other footy supporters, other hooligans, so it's good stuff. Yeah,
and that's the guy that played Ray, correct?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. Yeah, he did a great job. Actually, I think all the actors, everything was really, really well done in this movie. I really like seeing Colin. What's his name again? Colin Farrell.
Oh, Farrell.
He was fun. And I think that's his normal accent, isn't it? Or is he Australian? I can't remember.
He's Irish. So it was pretty close to his normal accent, if it wasn't exactly Irish.
Yeah. I remember going through Ireland, and we loved listening. So both the Scottish accent and the Irish accent, they're really, really fun to listen to. And so, yeah, it was really somewhat close to what Colin Farrell's actual accent is. He does a really good job. Like, he could play an American, obviously play an Irish with his accent, and then play a British citizen, doing a great job with his accents. But I like the cast of characters too. Matthew McConaughey is great. He's just about every single movie. He's fantastic. And I was... So on, I think it was Netflix or one of the movies channels out there. There's a movie called Gold, and I started watching it, and it has Matthew McConaughey in it. It's basically a gold prospector in like the 70s and 80s. And anyways, he has a company, and it goes downhill. I watched like the first 10 minutes of it. I was like, this is so boring, and so I turned it off. But usually Matthew, he was good in the movie, but the movie was dry. I probably should have gave it more time, but I was like, I'm done. I'm going to move on.
Gotcha. Yeah, if it doesn't grab you right away, why potentially waste another hour and a half of your time, Cool.
Absolutely.
So anything else that we failed to mention?
I can't think of anything. I liked it. I enjoyed it.
Good. Me too. And I recommend it to anybody out there, any movie-going person. So this was my choice this week. So Dusty, what are we going to learn from next week?
I remember the very, very first movie that we went to in the drive-in. Now, most people nowadays, especially millennials, like if you're 20 years old, you're not going to know what a drive-in is. Sky, do you remember the very first movie we went to see at a drive-in with our mom and our Uncle David? Our stepdad wasn't there, but Uncle David and mom were there.
I do not recall.
It was Ghostbusters. And I wanted to cover Ghostbusters. And I remember, I think, because it came out in 86, I think we were like 7 years old. Or was it 86? Is that when it came out?
Yeah. I think so.
Yeah. So we were,
give or take.
Yeah, we were really rather young, thinking of like a 6-year-old. I was scared out of my mind at Slimer and everything. And that was like, I think it was the librarian lady that was scared. It set me off. Slimer wasn't as bad, but I want to go back and watch Ghostbusters, especially Ghostbusters is that now like the third one is coming out. Ghostbusters 3, no, like that the one with the women, that was like that, let's completely
I
disregard
don't
that
think
one.
that counts.
It doesn't count. It's just a hey, let's try to make money. In fact, it was just sad, the producers and movie studios, and I was like, why did you do that? But the next one, Ghostbusters Afterlife, I want to see that, and I figure let's cover Ghostbusters. That's like one of the. I'm literally going to tell you right now, it's an A+. So
Yeah.
I've already seen it 100 times, but I want to do Ghostbusters. What do you think?
For sure. That's a great choice. I really appreciate that. So next week, Ghostbusters, the first one, the original Ghostbusters.
The
Yep.
original Ghostbusters. Yep.
That's right.
Oh,
All righty.
thinking of that,
Well,
did you ever watch the cartoons of Ghostbusters?
a few episodes here and there, but I don't really remember being an avid watcher of them.
I remember it, and I watched it quite a bit because I loved everything about it. So I'm super stoked to go over Ghostbusters.
Cool beans, cool beans. So, everybody, thank you so much for listening, or if you're on YouTube, for watching our podcast right here. We really do appreciate it. If you enjoyed this episode, please tell a friend. All you have to do is send them to the watchandlearnpodcast.com/pod85. That's the show notes for this episode right here. Alrighty, well, my name is Sky.
And I'm Dusty.
And we will return next week with
the original Ghostbusters.